And welcome back to another episode of Unpacking Endpoint Management with your host, um, Danny Guillory, and myself, Steve Thomas. And of course, with us as always is Rochelle Blanchard, our Q&A moderator and adult supervision. And today we have two very special guests from the Microsoft Intune team. We have Susan Taylor, a product manager for customer experience. And then we also have Jason Sandys, a former Microsoft MVP and now product architect on the Intune and Config Manager team. Susan and Jason, how are you today?
Awesome.
Fabulous here.
Awesome. Good to have you here. Rochelle, how's it going?
Good. Living the dream in the office.
Excellent. And I think Danny is having some technical difficulty, but he'll be joining us as well. He's over in St. Louis today. So we're going to talk today about an ongoing debate. For the past 3, 4, 5, how many years there's been an ongoing debate as to how we essentially handle Windows device identity in this post-pandemic, transformed digital cloud-first world. And, the question a lot of customers have always been wondering, and that we've been debating both externally and internally, do we go with a hybrid device identity or do we go with a cloud-only identity? We've historically come to know and love this as Hybrid AD Join versus Azure AD Join, but wait a minute. As of now, what do we call this? Did we change this now to something different? Intra ID?
I think. Yeah. I think the intent is for us to call it Entra joined or Microsoft Entra joined and hybrid Entra joined. But yeah, I haven't heard an explicit direction from the identity team on whether we include Microsoft in that, right? Because technically, I think you're not supposed to say Entra without Microsoft in front of it, and I don't know if the ID is supposed to fit in there. So for now, I think people are just kind of saying Entra joined, but I'm not sure if that's official terminology or not.
What is the Intune team's official viewpoint on this?
I mean, I'll call it what I'm told to call it. It'll take some adjustment, but we know what it is.
So sometimes we just simply avoid the controversy and refer to it as fully cloud managed. I think, yeah.
Cloud identity, because I feel like we need to be careful with cloud managed versus cloud identity.
Well, that's right, because you could technically still have some device that it's hybrid joined, but still fully cloud managed. Exactly. So once again, we go back to device identity. I love it.
We might change it again next week. I don't know.
So welcome to the party, Danny. And I just wanted to call out the elephant in the room, which is Steve's video, which is lagging from his audio. So just so everyone knows, we're aware of it and we're rolling with it. And if anyone can roll with it, it's Steve. So throwing it out there.
My random disconnects. I'm probably going to disconnect in 5 seconds anyway. Where are we? Where did we start?
For this debate, they had to handicap me a little bit because, kind of people the playing field.
Well, it is you, Steve. So, All right, where do we break the seal on this argument or debate?
We haven't yet. So, Danny, feel free to kick off the debate.
Oh man, this is weird because I can argue both sides, but let me start with no hybrid. You should not be doing hybrid. And I'm sure there'll be a bunch of angry people telling me about all the reasons they can't. I will tell you do it anyway. You will say it's too expensive. I will say still do it anyway. And we'll just keep going back and forth. But so I really believe fundamentally there's kind of two differences. Like when you talk to hybrid about customers, are we talking hybrid identity? Are we talking hybrid management? What are we talking? Hybrid all up. There's some other nuances when it comes to hybrid, especially if you talk about the whole Microsoft ecosystem. And hybrid is only a topic of conversation because customers are still going from that on-prem world to that cloud world. So if you took that out of the equation, then yeah, it's easily black and white. But once you start talking about, and this is kind of where I start jumping on both sides of the fence, because I still just can't get rid of that customer side of me, is you go talk to the customer and say, hey, you should be going cloud only. And either way the conversation goes, whether it's identity or whether it's management, the challenge winds up being X applications are not ready for cloud. Now you've just fell into the ditch and the pit hole that never ends of hybrid. Because for us, it's easy to say, hey, yeah, just find a new application, go get a new application, tweak that application to be cloud enlightened, cloud enabled, whichever word you want to use. The only problem with that is that I don't think we as Microsoft understand that it's easy to say, it's very difficult for the customer to do. So then they have to entertain the hybrid world. And as much as we say, hey, that's going to cost you, they're also telling me either way it's going to cost, right? Because if the application is not hybrid enabled, enlightened, et cetera, whatever word you want to use, I'll just stick with enabled. If the application is not hybrid enabled, that's a cost to actually go do it, right? To do the work. It's a cost to go get a new application. It's a cost to train employees on that new enablement. So then you wind up with cost on either side. And eventually I think what you wind up with too with customers is analysis paralysis. They'll do too much analysis on either side of the equation. And here we are just saying, go cloud, go cloud, go cloud. It's a lot easier to say than it is to do. Given all of that, and I think once you get into the analysis paralysis thing, you wind up spending equal amount of money either side of the equation. You're gonna spend equal amount of the money, if not more, on the on-prem side, because you'll do too much analysis paralysis. You'll do more of that side, and then eventually be like, crap, I should have just kicked the bucket and went over cloud anyway. So it's more of a, I think when you come down to it, it's more of a, to the end, where do I put that investment in cost? Do I put it on the on-prem side, or do I put it on the cloud side? I would say, what's your destination? Some customers just won't move from hybrid because it ends up being more than the application aspect. It ends up impacting their daily operations. God forbid it gets into revenue and compliance in whatever industry they're in. So it's a necessary evil, I guess I'd say. Well, yeah, I got to go through TSA to get to the airplane, so do it one way or the other. But it really is a difficult conversation, and it's easy for us as Microsoft to say, go cloud only. Customers have to acknowledge the push that we are helping them and trying to push them to go cloud only, period. It's a lot bigger onion peel on the customer side. I deal with it on a daily basis with my customers because I'm in the app space, and I deal with this app's not cloud light all day long. So you compound that with all the security signals and other aspects. You can talk to them about all of the values, but they still have to endure the cost on many different levels as they go through that journey. So it could be difficult, and it's painful to watch the customer go through it, because as you watch the customer go through it, as much headway as they're making, things are still changing faster and faster and faster from the security standpoint. And then that security standpoint impacts the operational standpoint. Things continuously change. So even when they think they've made 75% headway, they probably really only made 40%, because as things change so fast on them, it's just got to keep going and moving. So it's a difficult journey for customers, and as many tools as are out there, Microsoft and non-Microsoft tools, to make things easier, because the landscape changes so fast. I won't say it's a never-ending merry-go-round, but it can feel like that. I think you just got to have standards. You got to have milestones as you go through that progress. And I'll shut up and let everybody else talk. Come on, Jason. I left plenty of room for you to butt in and throw salt on that wound.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not lagging here, because I was busily trying to shut down a few processes here, but
I saw you picking your nose.
It's not necessarily an no, I don't think so. there's no easy answer here. There's no yes, no, right, wrong answer for every single customer. And I think that's where the complexity goes. People always look to us to give us, hey, tell us exactly what we're supposed to do. And the answer always, this is the consulting answer, but this is our answer as well, is it depends. We don't know all of the nuances, all the ins and outs of every little nook and cranny that your business is into and that your business needs you as the IT department to handle. What we can tell you is what we're engineering, right? And I think that's where we need to maybe focus our message a little bit more sometimes, is tell you that, hey, great, you want to use XYZ that was developed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, which is what domain join is, right? Which on-prem domain join, even AD, remember, on-prem AD was engineered 30 years ago, pretty much, right? I mean, it was late 90s, right? And it's not that it's bad, it's not that it's wrong, but it's not where our focus is on. So you're going to hit challenges with things like on-prem AD domain join that we are going to be like, yep, you're right. And you're either going to accept that, you're going to accept the risk of doing those things and the pain of potentially doing things that way, or you're not, right? You're going to follow us and do what we're doing or focusing our engineering attention on. And that's really the message that I try to deliver now a lot. Sometimes I try to be a little more hardcore about it because sometimes people kind of, they're new to having to make this decision. So I try to make it a little more simple for them and kind of give them the message you started out with, just do cloud, right? Because it lines up with where we want folks to be and what we're engineering things on. But as people bring up, well, what about? Yeah, there are always exceptions that folks need to handle, and you need to figure out how to handle those for your environment. And I can't tell you how to handle that for your environment. You got business application from the 90s, from the early 2000s. I know nothing about that application. I can't tell you anything about that application. You have an AS400 that you need to connect to. I don't know what you're going to do at that point, right?
Well, not only
and that's why. Yeah,
just not only is it difficult to say one size fits all for a customer, it's not necessarily one size fits all within your own environment. You're going to have different business units, different business teams that have different needs. And maybe there is that group of remote sales people who are always on the road, who use basic applications, who don't need to connect back into these legacy applications. They're a great candidate to move to Cloud Join when you refresh their devices. Like, we know that it's a journey, and you shouldn't let having to look at the whole ecosystem stop you from taking the first step with a subpopulation of your users, because it's always going to be complicated. And if you get distracted and caught up with all the complications, you're never going to move, and you're going to find yourself with deadlines and pressure down the road without being able to actually do this the correct way at your own pace.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point as well, right? And I don't really like this saying, so I don't know why I'm saying it, but, don't let good be the enemy of perfect, right? Or whatever. Don't let perfect, whatever that weird saying is, right? But it's similar to that, right? It doesn't have to be an all or nothing show. You always have to balance those kinds of things and figure out where it does make sense. And maybe there are people or devices in your environment where it doesn't make sense, right? There's people that are still running Windows XP out there. That's a huge gasp from everyone within Microsoft. But they're running it like on a manufacturing floor, and they put it in a segmented network that's completely, disconnected from everything else in the world. Okay, right. That's what they had to do because they have, X $1 million machine that's running Windows XP. Well, that's what makes their money. Of course, that's at that point a decision, and you have to factor in all of those different things. And not saying that's exactly what you're going to do here, right? The technical details are going to be different, but you still have to account for those kinds of things, right? And you have to be intelligent about what you're doing. And that's why these one-size-fits-all best practices, most people that have known me for any amount of time know that I hate that term, because this is one of those things that falls into that. We can give you guidance on kind of what we think you should do, but there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. And when someone asks me for best practices, sorry, and I know this is a criticism, and this is me potentially throwing stones at some people.
No, No. No.
That's why we're here.
No.
Yeah. When they ask me for best practices, what that means is you don't actually know what's going on in your environment. You've never sat down to define what your own requirements are. And you didn't even look at what the tool can do to see if those match up with your requirements. And I know that's an over-the-top statement. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. But it's generally true. It's, generally, so I'm sure someone will take offense, and I'm sorry. But
No, I
and that's
agree.
Go ahead.
I hate when people ask me about best practices because the signals that sends is, well,
right.
It's like they're trying to ask me to be accountable, and I don't think that's right. Like, you should have enough. I'd rather give you enough information so that you can make the right decision for your organization. Because yes, our products work across the board for a lot of customers, a lot of industries, but how those products are used across products, regulatory reasons, and operationalized and managed admin, like, that could be different for every customer, whether it be a big difference or a small difference. So when I hear what's the best practice, I knee jerk to basically giving them as much info as I can so that they can decide what their own best practice is. It's good to hear how other people are using stuff, but the way I drove to the office today may not be the same route somebody else takes. We could be coming from the exact same point, but the GPSs may give us different directions, avoiding traffic, avoiding things. So anyway, I'm going on a soapbox, but.
Well, coming to you from 3 seconds into the future here.
Oh, God.
The thing that the one that I like is when customers ask me, well, how does Microsoft do it? And I always preface that with most of the time, how we do it internally is definitely not the way you want to be doing it. So, we are a certain type of company that revolves around building of software. A lot of times we run teams that was just compiled 2 hours ago, and and we definitely don't recommend our customers run alpha versions of products in production like we do. So it's definitely an apples to oranges comparison there. But so Rochelle, do we have questions?
We do. We have a couple. If you guys want to take a break from arguing, I can throw some out there. The first question we have: with Hybrid Join, we can easily manage accounts that haven't signed in for a specific number of days using a script with scheduler checking using last logon timestamp. Azure AD doesn't work like this. How do I automatically disable users on AAD when not signed in for a specific number of days?
My first reaction to that is Power Automate might be a better option for you. Like, take that script, do some automation, Power Automate, and call that a day. Let that do your mundane task. I could be wrong. Jason, Susan, tell me how bad I am.
I think the crux of the question there is there actually an attribute within Azure AD that checks last logon time, and is that transmitted from the Azure AD domain join device to Azure AD? I don't know, because I've actually never looked for that. The scripting part and the Power Automate part, sure, but I don't think there's actually an attribute, a similar type attribute, where you could actually go disable the account. I guess there's the bigger question here, and we could clearly make some guesses, is why you need to disable the accounts in the first place, because that won't stop the user from logging into the device. I don't think folks know that one. There are nuances with Azure AD domain joined or Entra joined Windows endpoints. That won't stop the user from logging into the device. It will stop them from accessing all of your corporate data that's sitting out in Azure, or that's using Entra ID for authentication. But yeah, I think there's a bigger scenario that maybe needs to be looked at. And it's kind of taken as par for the course that you should be doing this in on-prem AD, but that doesn't always mean that you should be doing that in Entra ID as well. So that's the best I can say at this point, though, because it's not one I've looked at explicitly.
Okay.
It's going to take a while to get used to Entra.
Agreed.
But I do think there is an attribute tells you the last login, so you can make some triggers off of it. Because I know I've used it before. I don't remember exactly where it was, but I know I've used it in a PowerShell script before, and then I kind of did similar to what he's asking with Power Automate. So it's there to do. Level of effort may vary.
Yeah, there's got to be some tracking. There's got to be some auditing of the last time an account was used. I just don't know if it's a specific attribute or if there's some other way to grab that info and then take an action on the account.
It's definitely 100% in the audit logs, right? Because we would have to have that audit log. So I just don't remember if I got it from the audit logs or if I got it from Azure AD directly. But either way, there is a way to do it. Yeah,
it sounds like a good question for someone, an MVP or somebody to go do some research and post.
Good call out, Jason. We have another question from Christian. Can someone explain from a technical point of view how Config Manager performs the Azure AD or Entra ID join? And is a SCP in AD necessary?
I'll let Jason.
I can take that one real quick. So Config Manager is not actually doing it, right? Config Manager is just flipping the switches so that and in this case, I think you're talking about hybrid, right? Because if it's pure Azure AD domain join, then clearly Config Manager has no role whatsoever there.
Yep.
But for hybrid AD or hybrid Entra, assuming that's what we're calling it, at that point, it's just Config Manager flipping those same switches in the registry, which group policy would be doing to enable that. The reason the SCP is there is to provide information for that device so that it knows which AAD tenant to actually join. That can be done other ways as well. There is documentation on how to actually punch the registry values for that. So if you look up the Hybrid Azure AD domain join docs, which I'm sure they're probably still called that, it has the information on why you should do an SCP or why the alternate path that you don't have to do an SCP for. SCP makes it really easy. I see people balk at always putting information in Active Directory. I'm never really sure why. They're just scared of changing something that's irreversible, I guess, or having maybe wider impact than they think it should. And that's actually why they did create the registry values so that you can have a controlled rollout. I think that's what the doc is actually called, is controlled rollout of Hybrid Azure AD domain join, really close to that. And it talks about those registry values. So yeah, you can definitely do it that way without the SCP. Like I said, it's not really Config Manager doing it. You may as well just do it the standard way. And because Config Manager kind of obfuscates it a little bit and makes it a little more difficult for you to see what's going on instead of just doing it yourself.
Cool. We have a question from Andre. What would be an applicable cloud-based replacement for DFS or a distributed file system for customers who have to leave data in local data centers for compliance reasons? Is there a path to cloud from an on-prem solution?
OneDrive. Sure. OneDrive.
Yeah, I guess that's what's the purpose of DFS? So that would need to be the kind of clarifying point here. Not that it's not usable or not useful. Why are you using DFS in the first place, and what capabilities of DFS are you looking or should you still need if you move to a cloud solution?
Azure
Once
files.
again, we can kind of guess that maybe what you're looking at there, or what you think. But yeah, there are other things there. It all just depends upon what your end goals are here. But at the end of the day, OneDrive does a lot of cool stuff, right? I mean, it backs everything up. I guess possibly drive letter mapping, which is evil, but that's a whole nother.
Well, we have cloud SMB services as well, and I probably would say it's tied back to an application at the end of the day. It always goes back to an old application.
Yeah. I think Steve's got a little bit of allergies, but he's named a few of the things. I think the determining factor there is don't look at the solution, look at what you need to achieve. Yeah. Because maybe, as Steve mentioned, you need to connect it to an application to share files, save files from the application, or you need control over access. Because then that could deviate you in two different places, right? You could be looking more at access control versus just somewhere to store some files, or both. Because now you could be looking at whether it be OneDrive, Azure Files, SharePoint, God forbid, or as Steve said, connecting that to an application to just save some data. So who needs access to said data? I think that's where your starting point is. What do I want to do? Do I just want a place to store files, or do I need a limit access control? Then now you could even branch that into, God forbid, conditional access stuff too.
Yeah, that's a good call out too, Danny. And I kind of said that as well. Earlier when I was talking about best practices, it's about your requirements, right? Stop looking at your solution. Stop trying to translate your solution. Look at your requirements and then figure out what meets your requirements. And I think Heather's going to throw this up in the bar that's floating there. Yeah, there we go. xyproblem.info. I discovered this a while ago, and that's exactly what the XY problem is someone comes to you and says, hey, I need this to be pink, right? And you're just like blindly going to make it pink instead of being like, well, why do you really need it pink, right? And then it's like, well, anger management, right? I don't know. Okay, well, let's figure out a better way to do anger management than making something pink because our text is already pink or whatever, right? They totally contrived there. But if you're just trying to translate, the actual what someone already did or the actual solution, you probably missed the boat. And yeah. Susan can probably speak to this. She's been doing it a little bit longer than I have. As far as talking to customers, one of the things that we do on our team, the CAT team, is we ask why. And it probably sounds like we're questioning what the customers are doing and telling them that they're wrong, but it's never the intent, right? We try to ask them why. Susan, you want to expand on the 5 whys a little bit?
Yeah, it's really easy to fall into the idea that we've always done this, so we're going to continue to do this. And how do we do it in a new way? But you need to step back and think about the why. Like, why are we doing this? What does it matter? Or what's the outcome? And think about the fact that technology's changed and continues to change. And we need to look towards what's coming, how to get there, and what success looks like in the future. And I know it's easy. Like, I've been in IT for 20 years. It's easy to say, well, we're going to do it for the same way we've done it for 20 years. But stepping back and looking at the big picture, looking at what we need and what success looks like, and how do we get there from there without taking the same route, without taking what we think is the easy way, is the only way that we can get better and have a better solution, a better environment, and actually use the tools and opportunities we have in front of us to their full potential.
Yeah, people are afraid of change sometimes too, right? Don't be afraid of change. IT is change. Think about where we were just 10 years ago. And if you're afraid of change, it's either change your mindset, because that's not changing. Keep using the word over and over again. Or this might not be the best place for you because you're just going to get overwhelmed, right? And I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but it's reality, right? I remember I was an admin late 90s. We had a secret. So I was in the military. We had a secret network in the facility I had running Windows 3.1. This was late 90s. So I think 95, 98 was already out. Yeah. And we were switching out all the computers in that network to Windows 98, I think. It was a while ago. And I remember a colleague of mine was like, why? There's so much change. I mean, this was from Windows 3.1 to Windows. This is just crazy. It's too much now. Like, this was in the 90s, right? And think about how far away we are from that now. It's just the reality of it. It's how things are. So,
and I mean, I see it with my customers all the time. It's, well, we've done this, so we're going to redo it, or we're going to rebuild what we had.
That's a good one for you, Danny.
Wait, Susan was saying something. What were you saying, Susan?
No problem. As you say, just like I see it with my customers, where we've always done this, so we're going to rebuild what we did. But why? Like, let's stop and take a second before we redo all this work. I am a fan of working smarter, not harder. And if I can do a little bit of extra work up front to save myself headache and rework in the future, that's going to be my preferred path. And so it's worth it to kind of get a little bit deeper and understand up front what success looks like, not just now, but in a year or in 5 years or whatever. So I'm making sure to set myself up for success in the future too.
And y'all all gave really good answers. You know why I'm going to ask why though? I'm going to ask why because I'm lazy. I don't want to do extra work. Wait, why are we doing this? I don't want to do work just because you said do it. I want to know why. That way, at least I know I'm doing the right work instead of as Jason said, I'm going to make this pink. Why? If I don't ask why, I just go do the work. All to have for another conversation to happen 3 weeks later for me blue. Like, okay, just why we? I want to be lazy. Sorry, I want to do the right work first, not do work over and over just because somebody made a decision. All right.
You just want to be back in boot camp again, Danny, and have someone tell you what to do for no reason, right?
You know,
thank you, sir. May I have another?
Sometimes I do turn into Drill Sergeant Guillory. Like, just do it. Get it over with.
I'd love to see Danny with his kids.
Oh, no, you don't. My kids don't want to see it.
I ask why because I'm lazy. I need to know.
That's why I came to the office today, so they won't be hearing it.
Okay, we have another question. This one's from David. We have many programs larger than the 8 gig Intune limit that we keep in Software Center for the groups that need it. If we went Entra ID Join, I can't even say it yet, and not hybrid, could we still utilize the Config Manager client with Software Center to still support those groups?
Man, it was kind of, so first my reaction is, well, why not? Yes, you could. The 8 gig limit that we have in Intune, we have that full purpose. If you really need that, I'd say maybe work with support. Maybe there's something that they can do. In a more plug aspect, advanced app management is one of the things that I've been PMing and working on. It's no secret. It's all public information. That may be able to help you as you go forward because some of those apps that you have over 8 gigs most likely will be in the catalog, and then you won't have to worry about that 8 gig limit. But, you know, my first reaction is, yeah, drop a support case. Maybe they can help you with that 8 gig limit. Second would be, yes, you could still use Software Center. I don't know why you wouldn't. I'm not aware of any artificial blockers in there that will stop you. 3, advanced app management, small plug for one of the things I'm working on.
And kind of what Danny was saying, just because the device is only Entra ID or Azure AD Join, that doesn't mean you can't utilize config man. A cloud device identity does not preclude you from having on-prem device management as well.
Right.
So when we're thinking about hybrid, there's the identity can be hybrid, but management can also be hybrid, and they are 2 separate constructs to consider. So it's easy to get them mixed up. It's easy to assume hybrid join is how you have config man, but they are separate.
Yep.
It's going back to kind of where our engineering is at, though. Keep that in mind. We're not dissuading people from doing Config Manager today. We love Config Manager. I mean, I built my career on Config Manager, right, pre-Microsoft, so I still love it. Danny, similar, right? Nothing wrong with Config Manager, but you know, our mission and our vision as a corporation are clear and have been for 10 years. So that's, keep it in mind. That's the long-term goal. Long-term here, I don't know, it's a bit fuzzy, but we're going and we're all in building and making sure that Intune can do things for every organization. We realize that we're not there yet. There are some gaps for some people, and we're working on it. We want to hear from folks when they have these kind of issues so that we can get them there, though. So, sorry, not trying to be too marketing or salesy there, but we're all here for a reason, and we want to do the best we can. So we need help doing that sometimes, though. We don't always know, right? We do sit a little bit in a crystal castle. We are in a little bit of a walled off garden, a little bit. Susan, maybe not so much because she talks to customers that yell at her every day, but the rest of us maybe a little bit, so we need to hear those kinds of things on occasion to level set us.
All right, we have another question. This one's from Matthews. I apologize if I butchered your name. We are implementing now Hybrid Azure AD Join via Autopilot. How will we know that we are ready now to Azure AD Join only?
Danny, you got to stop laughing at every question, though.
The word like hybrid.
You're not laughing at the question. You're having a reaction and you're laughing at your reaction. I think that's the better way to put it, right? Because the question's totally valid. But
yeah.
I mean, like the first way I feel like is just to try it. Like take a device that you know, or take a device you're going to run through. Just only do the Azure join. Don't do the hybrid. Don't go through the hybrid join. See what applications you can get to. If a device, or assuming the user's synced from on-prem, your device, you will be able to do that translation for a user off to an application that uses on-prem identity. If it has device identity, that's where you need that hybrid join. Are there applications? Are there network access resources? You're not going to know until you try it. And we can't just say, yes, you're ready. It's something you're going to have to experiment with on a case-by-case basis. Like pick a business unit, try it before you roll it out for everybody. But that's probably where I would start. Jason or anyone else?
yeah, it's like trying new food, right?
Yeah, if you don't try it, you never know what your gaps are. So I second everything Susan said. Go try it. Like write down your gaps. I used to call them scorecards. Write a scorecard down, and then that helps you figure out what your gaps are. What those gaps? Your problem, operational problems, architectural problems, or I think you need to go ask Microsoft for help, assistance. I need this, feature request type stuff. Jason or Steve from the future.
Well, if they got Hybrid Azure AD Join working via autopilot, that that's harder than Azure AD Join being implemented. I mean,
that's actually why I was laughing.
No lies.
Those together.
How? So coming to you from the future again, I will say that a lot of times endpoint managers don't really get a say in the matter because they'll get a mandate that, hey, we've just gotten a whole bunch of breaches and we need to roll out a whole bunch of advanced EDR, XDR. We need to lay out Defender. We need to lay out, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for O365. We need to get Endpoint DLP. We need to get all that stuff rolled out within the week. And the quickest way to do that is to turn on Hybrid Azure AD Join. And we don't have time to do your cloud migration project. I'm the CISO. What I say goes, security first, yada, yada, yada. And usually customers find themselves in Hybrid AD through no fault of their own. So the next question would be, where do I go from here? How do I get
Yeah, the first thing I'd say, the first reaction I have is what you did is not wrong. For your existing systems, turning on hybrid, that's great because it does get you to all of those things you just talked about, Steve, right? And that's where you need to be. You need to enable that cloud bridge so that you can do your existing systems. When we harp on moving to Azure AD Domain Join or Entra Join, what we're really talking about is those new devices, because we know there's going to be disruption if you try to convert those existing devices, those existing users. There's going to be pain for them. And you don't want to have that discontinuity of business, right? And so it's really about those new devices. And that's why the hybrid autopilot particularly pokes a lot of us, because that totally goes against that message at that point in time. It's the new systems that's the easiest place for you to make sure that you're not disrupting the users. It's the easiest place for you to do testing with a select group of users or just within IT, right? You got to start somewhere with your POCs. And so that's where you want to go. And then you slowly, land and conquer, there's all kinds of interesting cliches there, but, broaden out once you start small. And then you get as far as you can. Maybe you can't get 100% today because you have some random application from the 90s that doesn't, work that way. But if you can get to 95%, and it may take you 2, 3, 4, 5 years to do that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not saying that people need to flip a switch and do this overnight. But at the end of the day, you will reap all of these benefits of having cloud-only identities reducing your on-prem footprint, your on-prem dependencies, and all of those things that come along with using commodity services, and then all the cool things that sometimes it's not always perfect, but the cool things that we add every single month, right? Azure adds things almost on a weekly basis, which I know is really fast. Intune, we definitely add things on a monthly basis. Entra, they have add things on a monthly basis as well, right? You get all of that new stuff for free effectively. A lot of it is opt-in, right? You don't have to use it, but you get it. So there's tons of benefits from going this path, along with just simply aligning with what we're doing in engineering, right? We're not engineering any of that on-prem stuff in general.
Yeah, no, not at all. So like the biggest thing I think, Jason, is even once this show's over with, I know we'll talk about thoughts, but one thing that sticks out to me when I talk to all customers is the things that you need to work on or want to work on, they fit in your environment. Maybe not across the whole board, but 5%, 10%, 20%. Like hybrid's going to fit somewhere. Autopilot's going to fit some. Like I'm always in these conversations of it doesn't work, it sucks, I need this, I need that. But what's there to work today does work. It doesn't work for 100% of your estate. We can acknowledge that. But if you're not wanting to move forward because it doesn't work for 100% of your estate, then I think that's an artificial blocker that you as a customer put that in your own way. Because if you can make things easier, whether it be 10, 20, 30, 40% of your estate, why would you not do that? Like it may not work, and it probably won't work for 100% of your estate day one. But if you don't try it, you don't know what it works for. You don't know and you don't know what to ask for next. Anyway, that's my soapbox for now.
Yeah, none of us are trying to be soapboxy, but we've delivered some of these messages so many times, right?
Yeah.
That they kind of sound like they're canned in a way, right? So
Yeah.
And it looks like we just put up another link to some documentation that myself and a few other people in CAT worked on. Really, it was about 18 months ago. I'm actually actively going through and scrubbing the docs a little bit just to make sure that the message is a little more crisp. As one of our colleagues loves to call out, that things need to be crisp. And it talks about this journey because it's as usual, it is a journey. Like I said, it's not overnight. But it talks about a lot of these considerations about why you should be doing things, how you should be going about doing things. Here's some steps for you to think about going through. And there's one page in there that basically has a chart that I just did revise, and we published it last week, or we updated it last week, and it got published. That basically says existing devices, hybrid, great, no problem, right? We're not asking you to reset your existing devices. If you want to, go ahead, knock yourself out. But we're not necessarily saying that you should do that or you have to do that. It's the new devices where we really want you to start focusing on being AAD joined, right? Where possible, right? If you got a nuclear sub, not that many people have nuclear subs, but if you have some type of environment like that, clearly that's not going to be possible.
For those
and at that point, you're going to have to stay with it.
For those listening via podcast, it is aka.ns/cloud native endpoints, one word, CLOUD native endpoints.
Good call out, Steve. Thanks.
So we have a question from Skyler. What is a common technical obstacle you see customers encounter when evaluating a transition to a full Azure AD environment? One obstacle I've encountered is a large ingrained group policy library that doesn't easily convert to configuration profiles with the conversion tool. Who wants to take this one?
I think, Susan, you hit on this before. You can expand it. Just because you always did it doesn't mean you should continue to do it, right?
Yeah, that's especially with a group policy. I guess I'll start there. Is if you are like most customers that I have, you have a lot of very old, very potentially outdated group policy. And the best way to start is to go through a rationalization. What is there? Why is it there? Do you still need it? Do you need that policy from 2008 that no longer applies? You don't.
Why are my net meeting policies not supported?
Yeah. We have the group policy analytics. It's a great tool out there to kind of see where what you have aligns with what's available within Intune today. you're not going to see 100%. Not 100% there, not 100% is still applicable, but it will get you a good portion of the way there. And between the baselines, the security baselines that are there, I challenge you to really sit down and look at what's missing, what you think is missing, what we don't have, or what you don't have, and whether you still actually need it. I do also challenge you to not hit the tempting big migrate button that's available in Group Policy Analytics. Like, it's there. It sounds like a great idea, but if you have stuff in GPO, doesn't mean you need it in Intune. We want a clean slate going forward. So do what's right. Do the work up front. Don't bring something over just because it's always been there.
I debated the idea of a migrate button because I basically said, if you put it there, everybody's going to want to click on that migrate button and migrate their estate whole hog. But this has been a very philosophical episode. You know, we quoted Voltaire. Our producer reminded us of Doug Adams. You know, anything that is in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything that's invented between when you were 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you could probably get a career in it. But then anything invented after you're 35 or 40 is against the natural order of things. And a little bit of philosophy on my end. I really have to remove my bias. I mean, I can be so biased sometimes. Well, here's an example. Anybody that drives slower than me is a moron. Anybody that drives faster than me is a moron. So I definitely always have to look to remove my bias from decisions, especially when it involves the device estate as well. But anyway, enough philosophy. Let's get back to some of the technical questions and some of the debate. And it looks like there's a lot of responding to a lot of the questions, a lot of engagement by folks that are commenting and answering each other's questions as well. And that at the end of the day, that's what the show is about, the engagement. And we appreciate the community doing that as well. So do we have any additional questions, Rochelle?
We do. We have one from Russell. What methods are available to be aware of Entra ID Join devices with on-prem AD tools? Co-management seems like one way, but other infrastructure support groups can't see those devices as they are reliant on AD systems.
That's another one.
Go ahead, Jason.
It depends upon your requirements and what you're doing. There's going to be different ways of doing some things, right? Because one of the core assumptions here is that you might not have direct connectivity to these boxes anymore, these systems, which is clearly the reality in hybrid work, right? In post-COVID and clearly during COVID, but post-COVID, who knows where that system's actually at? And so you as a support person have an expectation to be able to just go to $C or admin dollar or whatever, the share on that system. Probably not true anymore. And so you've got to think about those kinds of things when you're thinking about those support processes. Okay, I need XYZ, so I need to get to a log file. How can I do that? Well, within Intune, we can actually go grab most log files. It's a preset definition of log files that it grabs, but that's a different way of doing it so that you can get to those log files so that you can review them. Not real time, clearly, but if you're connecting to a system that's, who knows, halfway across the world, you shouldn't expect real time. So that does potentially degrade your experience for that on-prem system slightly. So you need to factor those things in, but it just depends upon the task that's at hand. You're going to have to think about those things differently. I am no longer a day-to-day admin, so I can't speak to all of those. Danny actually does still some day-to-day admin things, so maybe there's some other things that he can call out. But I don't do any day-to-day admin stuff anymore.
Nothing here. They're all bad practices anymore.
Logs are the one that I know about. I mean, there's always going to be something, because it's always that expectation of having maybe that real-time touch and feel of that managed device or that device, right? But that's not a great expectation to have anymore, right? Just because we don't know where that device explicitly is anymore.
So
we've got to move away from that.
That's where you get into a little, I don't know, we're in a debate. So, but that's where you get into what I think would be a little bit disconnect from Microsoft, us, internal versus customer, right? Support needs, if I call you, Jason, and say something's up with my computer, you need to be able to access it more real time. And that may be, that's definitely using different tools than what support's used to, right? We're all, we've all been admins before. So yeah, I want to type your computer name, $, and oh wait, now I can't get to it. Dang it. What do I
learned admin $/CCM, and I learned that in 1996, and it's become muscle memory through 1996, 1998, 2003, 2007, 2012, 2017, and I could always rely on whack admin $, and that's it's not necessarily having to change, because as we say, if you were born into this world, you expect change, but there were certain things that always remained constant over the years. And that was the beauty of SMS and ConfigMan, was as the product evolved, there were still always tried and true methods. You always knew where to go get the logs. You always, when a new component was introduced, there was a new log file right there. It was always in the same directory, and you're having to fight muscle memory. I hate to get philosophical again, but it become, Fleetwood Mac, landslide. I've been afraid of changing because I've built my life around you, and admin $.
We have another question from Cornelius, and I keep staring at it thinking that it's like a adult tongue twister. It's giving me I was reading to my kids last night, The Cat in the Hat, and they're all like, my husband always laughs at me when I read because I have to really focus. And now I'm looking at this like, okay, I can do it. What about renaming Autopilot deployed Hybrid Azure AD Join devices, since Windows Autopilot Hybrid Azure AD Join devices aren't particularly flexible?
Wow, that was a tongue twister. Congratulations.
I'm no help on this one.
It's just another one of those painful ones. We have a perspective in Microsoft of what you should be doing, but that doesn't always meet the real world. And our perspective is you shouldn't care about the name, right? The name is it's irrelevant. It does. That is easy for us to say. Organizations that have been able to accomplish that, it makes their life easier 100%. I mean, there's no denying that. But if you have business or support processes that are built off of having an L in the name to signify it's a laptop, so that it goes to the laptop team instead of the desktop team, hopefully you don't have that, but right, you guys get the picture of what potentially is there. Then you kind of need those kinds of things, right? And that's where the renaming ultimately comes in. So try to get away from that, find other ways to do that, find a real ITIL tool, right, that actually can have that information in there so that you don't have to encode that in the name. That's not always the best, but that's kind of where we're at today. As far as renaming that device from a technical perspective, you can rename it in your on-prem AD and it will rename in AAD, right? That does work. You just can't rename it the other way around because it doesn't flow that way. There are scripts out there to name them during Autopilot, but again, and I think Steve kind of alluded to this, right, where hybrid Autopilot or doing hybrid Azure AD domain join with Autopilot is kind of painful. And he was practically applauding the person who put that question in before that actually got it set up. This is kind of one of those reasons, right? It's not the complete solution. It was never intended to be. And we have no intent of working on it anymore. So this is a pain that you're going to have to live with having hybrid Azure AD domain join and Autopilot. It is what it is. So you're going to have to change something, or better yet, just don't do that and do Azure AD domain join for your new devices. There's no easy answer here, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately, maybe it's a forcing function. And sometimes we leave things to be forcing functions, right? To force people not to do things we don't want them to do.
Yeah.
We had a question from Matt Levy. Why are we still hybrid joining workstations? Well, believe it or not, I still see it. critical infrastructure that had to remain in force during the pandemic, and now they're looking to shore up and secure, and so they're adopting EDR solutions, and they're still on-prem, and the quickest way is to go hybrid AD. There's there's organizations that still have old machines still running Windows 10, and they kind of found themselves in hybrid AD, and they're just going to keep a level of consistency until they can make this huge cutover or migration. I'm more along the lines of live side by side, live hybrid and cloud only side by side, and let your hybrid just attrition out with the hardware. And I do encourage folks, if they're adopting Windows 11, to really, really strongly consider. I know I'm supposed to be taking the hybrid side here, but if you're adopting Windows 11, Windows 11, the cloud first experience is where all the innovation and the design is headed, and it just makes the most sense. I completely understand Windows 10 living in a hybrid AD world, but let's take a few moments here at the end, because we're coming up on the top of the hour here, to have some final thoughts. And let's go clockwise here. Susan, do you have any final thoughts?
Sure. So I guess when it comes to hybrid and Entra ID Join, consider that your current devices, your existing ecosystem, they are on the local train that is going to stop at the hybrid station before they go on to the cloud only station. But those new devices should be on that express train straight there. Just because you've always done it doesn't mean you still need to. And definitely don't let yourself get caught up on the on conflating cloud management and cloud identity. Like, that's the first step. It's easy to get caught up and get overwhelmed thinking all of these are the same. Just take it one step at a time. Pick up the low-hanging fruit, and you'll be successful. You can do it.
Danny, what about you?
In time of investment, time of financial, and I'm thinking more with my former IT director hat on, I would say investment in my people's time would be cloud. And any investment I put financially would be cloud. The on-prem, whether I like it or not, needs to evolve in the way it's going to evolve. And I'm going to get more from my future destination is to start just prioritizing cloud. That doesn't mean I deprioritize and stop investing in my on-prem stuff, but it will have to be second nature to the muscle of going cloud. If it's not going cloud, I'm not doing the right thing for my business. So I would say all my people in financial investments, it would be prioritized cloud over on-prem. And that does mean I would have to probably incur some cost in changing product, evolving product, investing in on-prem product to make it cloud. But that's the right investment rather than me hanging the money out the window driving down the interstate. Tough call, but that's what we're paid to do.
And Jason.
Yeah, a real similar sentiment there, right? It's about where you're investing your dollars, and the one way I've always characterized the cloud is it's the commodity. An exchange was always the perfect example of this. Exchange Online. We had back in the day, right? Every organization in the world had their own Exchange server, their own Exchange admin, their own problems that they had to deal with around managing all of that as well. That doesn't make sense, because basically, and Exchange is great. No one's putting Exchange down, but Exchange did one thing: it sends email and receives email, right? So the fact that everyone had to have this high-priced administrator, this high-priced Exchange infrastructure, didn't make sense. We moved that to Azure, right? And no one has to really worry about that anymore. It's a given, and it's a commodity given, right? And that's the whole point here, is we're taking away all of those things. Why does it have to have their own on-prem things for a lot of these things? Give it to someone else who knows how to do that really, really well. And now you can go on to those more complex tasks of solving your business challenges and the challenges that are significant to your business, instead of worrying about, does my Exchange server have enough RAM? Things like that, things that that shouldn't be worried about by every single organization, right? Go solve your actual business challenges and make more money or make your business better instead of worrying about your exchange being better.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That will wrap it up for today. And thanks for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.